66.
The infamous words that has generated more and more stories through the years became the epitome once again for another piece of Star Wars content and has sparked more and more seasons of them.
Excellent. Everything is going as planned.
We're getting into one of those shows that had its naysayers and those that didn't believe it would work. A show predicated on the understanding that you've watched a movie and an entire series of content based on the Season 2 trailer to get an understanding of where this one is headed. I am of course talking about The Bad Batch. With its second season arriving imminently, I thought I'd refresh everyone's minds with a review series of the first season.
Oh, yeah.
Anything that utilises the Clone Wars animation style, I'm here for, and given the spectacle that was the Clone Wars' final season, I was elated at the prospect of receiving more in the future. And lo and behold, here we are with 2 seasons of The Bad Batch and Tales of the Jedi, coming in full swing with their additions to the lore around the time of the prequels. Before we get into my thoughts on this episode, I want to issue a very heavy spoiler warning for large aspects of the first season of The Bad Batch if you haven't watched it. If you have watched it, however, enjoy.
You've done enough, okay? Why don't you go start a Ruiners Club? Oh, wait, you probably just ruined it.
Well, then I'd be doing a good job because it's a ruiners club.
You ruined my analogy.
The Bad Batch is the successor to the Clone Wars TV series that focuses on a group of defective clones as they begin to traverse the galaxy in search of a new purpose for themselves following the events of Order 66. They quickly devolve and lose a member of the group to their programming in Crosshair, who becomes an antagonist for the season alongside the likes of Admiral Rampart, Cad Bane, Fennec Shand, and their own brothers. They gain a member, however, in the young female clone named Omega, and save her from becoming a science experiment as she possesses the last vestiges of Jango Fett's unaltered DNA, which the Kaminoans were hoping to exploit for the use of a new clone army to the Empire. That's a pretty broad synopsis for the whole season, I will admit, so allow me to refine it somewhat and dive straight into the first episode of The Bad Batch. It debuted with a 70-minute episode, the first in the Clone Wars style to do this, and for good reason. It brought us straight into the action with Order 66, with a stronger understanding of what happened to the clones once they committed the atrocities they did. The episode began with a slight retcon to the 2015 Kanan Jarrus comics, with audiences being introduced to a young Caleb Doom, and his master, Depa Billaba, who were thrown into the thick of it with Order 66, and we as the audience got to witness the events play out from the view of Clone Force 99, who were observing something they didn't understand, and had to play along for now to survive. The 5 members of the group are Hunter, Crosshair, Tech, Wrecker, and Echo. Hunter and Crosshair chase the Padawan through the forest nearby, but after a brief encounter that knocks Crosshair out, after trying to murder Caleb, Hunter tracks him down to a waterfront, but Caleb manages to escape, and Hunter covers for him. Crosshair recognises this, and this sparks some uneasiness in the group as Crosshair starts to question Hunter's intentions and abilities as a leader. Upon returning to Kamino and seeing the Republic has been repurposed into the Empire, Admiral Tarkin takes an interest in them and wants to utilise their unique abilities to exact silent destruction on potential enemies to the Empire. Starting with Saw Gerrera, who manages to reason with the Bad Batch and generates friction between them, leading to Crosshair being singled out for enhancement later on, then being played against the rest of the Batches in the closing moments of the episode. There were moments that were more profound than others throughout this, like the training sequence in the Kamino training grounds, which helped us understand each member's ability, ranging from Crosshair's shooting, Wrecker's brute strength, Tech's heightened intellect, Echo's hacking capabilities, and Hunter's agility. Then cut to the meeting with Saw, who managed to reason with them, but only Hunter and Echo were quick to agree. Tech took a back seat to consider the possibilities and outcomes, Wrecker was on the defensive, and Crosshair had a more agitated attitude to him, due to the inhibitor chip taking over, but there was enough reason left within him for Hunter to get him to back down. We were introduced to Omega in the episode as well, who was a young female clone, who had interactions with the group that were very interesting, as she took a natural liking to Hunter and Wrecker in particular, with her relationships blossoming with Echo and Tech later through the season. Crosshair, on the other hand, she felt a level of empathy and sorrow for, as it turns out she understands a lot more of the clone's programming than we're actually informed of initially, and she can see what is happening to him and tries to break through to him by reminding him that he's not that guy. To have Crosshair return from his reconditioning by the end was cold, and to see his steely glare with the rest of the group was almost disheartening to witness, as you realise that their connection was there, just Crosshair was a little more detached from the rest. But he still cared for his brothers even before this. So to see him shoot Wrecker and at the rest of the group without hesitation was a gripping way to cement your love as the viewer for the protagonists, but also question the actions of Crosshair and his allegiances, as you know this isn't his fault. There's a lot of character development put into this episode, and in my mind is the strongest debut for any Star Wars series, though that is rather subjective and up for debate.
Listen, you little wiseacre. I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong.
I love how we started the series, just diving straight into the heat of the moment that, as I mentioned, has become the epicenter for the Star Wars universe at this point, where Anakin became Vader, Luke and Leia were born, and we got to witness the start of journeys for Cal Kestis, Kanan Jarrus, Obi-Wan, Reva, Ahsoka, and Captain Rex. The strength of this series is admittedly there because of, well, the works of the Clone Wars and their inclusion within its final season, so they had a simple task when it came to introducing this show, but the ultimate question would be, how would you make us care for them? Well, that's the beauty of basing the premise of a show around defective clones, as they already possess looks and personalities that separate them from everyone else.
Look around. We're one and the same. Same heart, same blood. Your training is in your blood. And my blood's boiling for a fight.
The Clone Wars did a fantastic job of establishing different traits and dimensions for the clones, even adding layers of depth to characters like Cody, but they made their job even simpler when it came to introducing a series centered around defective troopers, as they would have already had preconceived notions of what's appropriate, how best to do things, and a more rationalized approach to intense situations, and an understanding of where to go when shit gets bad. Clone Force 99 were one of the more interesting additions to the final season of Clone Wars, but audiences did question at the time, why are we getting them here? With the initial belief being that it just adds some context to Rex heading into his final entry in the Clone Wars with Ahsoka. But, as it turns out, it was all being set up for this, and I, among many, am very grateful.
It's so beautiful.
The inclusion of Omega was a perfect move, as it gives the Batchers a reason to protect themselves, but grow as they now have a responsibility to this young life that they've adopted. She proves to be more than capable as the season goes on, and becomes an asset to the team by the end of the episode. The end result of this episode is that we got to know the Batchers, a firm understanding of where the Empire begins and how it will proceed going forward, and a dissension in the ranks that spills over into their first antagonist, that will follow them throughout many of their adventures. The complex relationship that is established between Hunter and Crosshair makes for an emotional moment by the end of the season, as we witness their feud play out in 3 stages, which I'll draw back on when we get there. I can't forget to mention, lastly, that the animation and visual quality of the series has admittedly been outdone by Tales of the Jedi, but is still a vast improvement when you compare it to the earlier seasons of Clone Wars. The depths and insights we get into each member is executed brilliantly, and leaves you with a definitive favourite by the end. Mine in particular is Echo, but I'd love to know yours. I would absolutely recommend watching this series, as it's an excellent continuation of the Clone Wars and gets us right into the early days of the Empire. That's going to do it from me though. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like, as it helps things out a lot, and drop a comment letting me know what you thought of the Bad Batch, and are you excited for Season 2 if you've already seen this first season. And subscribe for more content like this, as I've got plenty more on the way, and until next time, take care, and may the Force be with you.